Hey, it's your friend Cristiano, and welcome to the Queer Quest podcast. Hello, all you fabulous souls. Today, it's just me. It's a solo episode, and I wanted to take it all the way back because today I'm going to be talking about my own coming out journey. Talked about this before, years ago. I want to put this time to revisit it because there are so many people out there who are new to this, who may need to hear a story again, or just want to feel relatable because hearing other people's coming out stories never gets old. So for me, we're going back, well over 20 years when I was a young boy, almost 30, over 30 years, really, because I'm 38 years old, not hiding my age. And so back then, I was a completely different person. Actually, my name was Christopher. And I'll get into why it's Christiane now as the story unfolds. But back then, I was Christopher. I was part of a big family. I was a middle child, big youngest boy. With boy, and then my younger sister. So there was four of us. And I always had this, I was, classic middle child syndrome. Never felt like I had any attention. And I always thought in my mind that if I was a girl, then my parents wouldn't have had another child. So I kind of felt like I was a disappointment, and that kind of fell into the story. So I kind of just always kept to myself. I was a lone wolf kind of child. We moved around a lot. Well, I was born in Canada, we lived in England, and then we moved to Australia, and we settled in the Central Coast, which for anybody who has ever lived in like a coastal town, it's kind of like coastal country town energy, smaller town energy, where people kind of get in your business. Back then there was no openly gay or people around at all. It was still, of course, not how it is today. This is 30 odd years ago, and completely different. And going from living in the UK, brought lots of friends. I was into pop music. Moving to Australia, where none of that was the same. I got picked on in school like nothing else. Bullied severely from the girls, from the boys. And so I really struggled to fit in it. Really didn't have many, if any, friends at all. When going got tough, these kids got going. And so when I was bullied, it was always on my own in the end because everyone else would flee away because they were too afraid to stand up in case they were someone who would get, hit in the firing line. So for me, I just kind of went to school, came home, tried to hide away in my room playing video games because I really got caught up in the world of fantasy and all of that. And I loved video games because I was really good at them. And, young kids do that, right? I'm sure many of you can relate to those things as well. All while really, really struggling internally, not understanding what's going on, while I was having certain feelings towards, other boys, and not knowing what was normal, what wasn't normal. But of course, getting picked on and bullied at school, calling faggot, gay, poofed, all of those names that you get called, without not even understanding what that meant. And this is back before kind of really, you have internet at home. We didn't have internet at home at that time. It was a few years later that it did. So getting a call of these names, all I heard was, these are really bad. Because I was getting picked on and bullied and pushed around and all of those things because of this thing. And I didn't understand it because, again, for me, as a young person, I don't know that what I'm feeling is right or wrong. But as I'm getting called all these names, what I know is those things are wrong. And then you slowly start to see things on a show here about a gay person and you kind of understand it. And maybe the shows that I'm seeing were shows where it was like a crying show. The person was either getting attacked or killed or whatever it was. And you never left you feeling like being gay was a good thing. It felt like a lot of people hated that. And if that's what I was, because I was starting to have those feelings, then it was really, 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 really difficult as well. And so I repressed it, pushed it away as much as possible. Couldn't even, look at myself and say any of those words, because I knew that those words were terrible. It was an awful period of time. and I pushed my family away. I pushed everyone away and just literally would go out, go to school, come home, hide away in my room as much as possible, do any of the after school activities or my after school work, and then come back home. And didn't really have a relationship with anybody. I was so closed off because I was just so scared and so hurt and just struggling internally with all these deep emotions that just were like bottled up and just really causing me to feel like I was really numb. And then I would have these moments where I would just break down on my own and cry. I like literally, I would sit in my closet because it was like soundproof. Because if I was just sitting in my room, my parents could probably hear it because I was in the room next to them. So I'd hide in my closet, literally, and cry. So I was that kid literally sitting in the closet, crying about who he was and struggling to figure it out. And so I left school and I thought things would shift and change because, that's what you see, in all the movies and TV shows that like high school's over and then you kind of, the real life begins and that's kind of what happens. But not for me. For the next few years, I literally moved from just going to school and coming home to going to work and coming home and hiding away and continuing that. Was getting deeper into depression and to anxiety, especially social anxiety. At that point, I couldn't really go anywhere on my own. I couldn't go to the shops on my own. I couldn't go to the doctor on my own. I was like a 20-year-old kid and I needed my mom to take me to the doctors because I was so afraid of someone out there seeing me and bullying me. So I needed my mom as support. That was my support was to do that. And that was really some of the only times I would ever really spend with my mom's because I had to go somewhere for a specific need and I needed someone to come with me. Other than going to work, right? And so I'm at work here, still again in the closet, still having people kind of curiously saying stuff because I'm, flamboyant with how I express myself. I have a nasally voice, which all these things that people would, show up in movies and shows of camp queer people. That would be the representation. So I kind of stood out in that regard because people would be like, okay, like these are some behaviors that I've seen on a TV show. I've never met someone who's gay. Maybe this person is. And so bullying kind of continued into the workplace. Definitely not as bad as it was uh, out at school because, there's a schoolyard and you'd have all of that time there. Whereas you working a shift, it's very difficult to be in environments where that is. And those things are less tolerated. But it did happen still. It definitely did happen. And like I said, I didn't really have many friends. Now, there was this one kid who I wasn't sure about, but he invited me over to his place to play video games. And at that point, I really love playing video games. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll have a friend here. So he invited me over to his house. And as we're playing video games, he starts putting his hands on my legs, like the part of the leg that's closest, I don't know, he said the thigh part. Yeah, the one that's closer to the groin area. And I just sat there and froze. I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? I didn't push him away. I didn't do anything. I just sat there. And then eventually, after a few minutes, I continued playing the game as if like nothing had happened. And then the game finished and I kind of was like, I've got to go. Lo and behold, he goes into the workplace and told people about how I'm gay and how this experience had happened because he was open. This person was a bit more open about it. I didn't know that he was open, but he was open with other people that I worked with about it. And so he went around and gossiped and it got around. And for me, I continued to deny. Because at that point, I still hated that part of me. I wasn't out. There was not a single person. I wasn't even out for myself. I couldn't even say the words in the mirror. I'd be like that one and I'm mouthing the word gay, right? But I couldn't say it because the words wouldn't come out because I was so repressed. Like I said, I had all of this data to say that being gay was a terrible thing, that it was something that you would you would have a shitty life and all of these things, right? And so I denied it, and I was just still unsure. And so for me, at that point, like I said, I was really struggling with my own mental and emotional well-being. Like I said, I was dealing with a lot of depression. At that point, because I'm legal to drink, I would literally go to work, come home, grab alcohol and have it and drink it in my room on my own. And then listen to sad songs or love songs and wish that it was me and just sit there fantasizing about a different life. And this is when I started to really fantasize about what it would be like if I was who I was and the world was okay. Like I was a gay person and people loved me. Because at that point, I felt like I was unlovable. I had no love. Because they pushed away my family. I had no friends. At work, I was, like I said, a bit of a loner. And lo and behold, like this fantasy world was where I was living. And it went on like that for a few months, dealing with the depression, anxiety was at its point. I was even struggling with suicidal thoughts because I was like, but I'm not living for anything. I literally feel like I'm just existing, right? And so I'm listening to Whitney Houston, the greatest love of all, wishing that that was actually true. And so I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I have to figure if this is like, I would like to at least go and explore this one time and decide if this is something that is true of who I am, if this is right for me, or if maybe it's time for me to end my life.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of transformation that's uniquely yours? Welcome to QueerQuest, the world's first and best personal development platform created by and for the queer community. Imagine a space where your authenticity isn't just accepted, it's celebrated. A place where you can grow, learn, and thrive alongside a vibrant community that understands you. At QueerQuest, we're more than just a platform. We're a family. Connect with like-minded individuals, share your stories, and empower each other to reach new heights. Our tailored courses are designed to address the unique experiences of the queer community, from self-love and confidence building to career advancement and beyond. We've got you covered. It's time to step into your power and transform your journey. Join us today at courses.queerquest.vip, see what we're all about, and sign up to begin your quest.
Right? And so at that point, we had internet, of course, and I click on online and look up everything, get home if I wanted to. But my brother and my dad were both really in IT and really good at computers. And I remember my other brother got in big trouble because there was stroke porn on the computer and they looked it up and were able to do all these things. So I was like so afraid that if I ever looked up anything like with the word gay in or whatever, that they would find out, they would figure it out, I'd get in trouble and I'd be exiled, I'd be kicked out, whatever it was, you know? And again, that would be too much for me. So instead, I drove 30 minutes to a different town where nobody knew me at all. And I went to one of those internet cafes and I started searching, gay in Sydney. And well, I was looking in the Central Coast, but I knew there was nothing there because like there was no gay people around unless they was really underground. And so I found in Sydney, which was about an hour and a half drive away from where I was. And I found that there was a whole street called Oxford Street, and there was all these different bars and clubs and saunas and all these different things. So I started to kind of figure out, I want to go, like, if I want to explore this, do I want to go to a sauna? That felt like a bit too much because I haven't kissed a single person. I never kissed a girl before in my life, let alone a boy. Going to a sauna where it's like, I don't know, this in my mind, it was like everyone's just having a big orgy. And some places they do that, right? But I was like, that didn't feel right for me. And then the next thing was a bar. I was like, well, I go to a bar on my own. I know that that's going to be very, like a lot of insecurities come up. I felt very shy, insecure, going somewhere where I'm just literally, standing there on my own. Didn't feel comfortable to me at all. So I went and picked a club because I thought, at least if I'm there, everyone's dancing on their own. Like if I'm in the corner on my own, like I can probably be a little more hidden because, you see, on the TVs, right, that the class, it was a million people, everyone's dancing. So I felt like I could have hidden in that. So I picked a place. And so decided that there was a specific thing on and I was going to do, and I planned it like a few weeks ahead so I could be prepared to go there. And so I go to drive down there. This is a time when you obviously don't have GPS and you don't have stuff on your phone that tells you. So I had to go at that same internet cafe, find directions to this specific place from my place and print it out on paper. And so I was trying to follow like A4 pieces of paper and like where to go, where to turn. And as I'm driving down, I get completely lost to the point where I'm driving around for, a good hour of like not knowing where I was. And so I pull over on the side of the road and I just start crying, going, oh my God, like this is a sign. I'm not meant to go there. This is like God telling me, like, and I didn't really even believe in anything at all because my parents are not religious at all. I wasn't working a religious background. But at that point, I was trying everything to pray. I even tried to pray the gay away. Like, I was sitting at home in my room going, please, 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 please not be this way, right? And I didn't even have like like I said, a religious upbringing. So at that point, I'm crying in the car, thinking that this is a sign. And I eventually, you know, get myself together and keep driving, and I find a sign that's pretty much taking me back to where I lived. So I go up that way, get home, go back into my room, and just fall into another little bit of depression again. Because I'm like, it's not even going to work for me. I can't even get there. The universe is telling me that I'm not supposed to go, and so I kind of had this story like that, and it went like that. And I left it for a couple of months. Again, really, it continued on getting worse and worse with my anxiety and my depression. And then I finally was like, look, let's try it again here. Let's figure out where we went wrong in the driving so that we can do it. And so we finally got it sorted, and we go again. I feel like a couple of months later. And as I'm driving down, I realized that again, I'm slightly lost, but I feel like I'm not going to give up this time. I was committed to going to this place no matter what. And so I got back on this thing and, ended up getting into the city of Sydney, and what should have been an hour and a half ended up being like 3 hours on them. I'm driving down a one-way street in the middle of a big city of Sydney, going the wrong way. And so I was like, oh my God, not again. I ended up pulling over again, getting a bit emotional, but just going like, no, you're going to this place. Luckily, I'd left at like 6 o'clock in the evening, and by this time it's like 9 p.m. So I finally get to the place, and the club opens. Now, I've never been to a club before with anywhere, like, because, I'm 21 years old at this point, never been to a club with anyone because I didn't have any friends. And so I go to the front door and I'm like, is this R? Because that was the name of the club. And they're like, yes. And they kind of like could tell that I'm like, they were like, are you sure this is a gay club? And I was like, is it? Yeah. I was like, oh, well, can I come in? And they're like laughing at me, kind of like, okay, sure. Like, got him in. I paid to get in, and I go on. And I was the only person in the club at this point. Now, any of you who go out probably realize that, like, yes, the door might open at 9, but things don't kick off till maybe 11 or 12, or sometimes even later, depending on the place or the town that you're in. And so I go in there, and I was like, oh my God, I'm the only person in here except for one bartender over there. So I go get a drink, have the drink, and then I go, okay, can't sit here for hours. So I go back and sit in my car and just put on some music and just kind of like try to get into the grooves of things. And I have a couple of drinks actually that I had brought with me. I decided to drink those, listen to music, and just like allow myself to pump in. And finally, a couple of hours later, it's like 11 a.m. So p.m. I should say. I go back into the club, and now it's starting to get busy. So I'm there, and I just start drinking and just dancing and trying to figure it out. And I start realizing as the time goes on that like it's get busier and busier, and the place is packed, and it's filled with mostly gay people. And of course, there were some lesbians and some of their friends. So look, I work with predominantly gay people, and all these people look like they were having the best time of their lives. At this point, I'm a, sheltered little kid. So I think everyone says drinking, or they're just really happy because like they're openly gay. And so it's like, oh my God, wow, wow, wow. Let's keep drinking. And then I'll meet some guy. I can't even remember a thing about him, what he looks like, his name or anything. And immediately he comes up to me and we just start pressing. And this is the first time I ever kissed someone in my entire life. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And literally I was kissing this guy for like hours at a time, right? And all these people were like, wow, look at these two going, like they were saying all these little things, and I was like, didn't care. I was so drunk, living my life. Oh my God, like I'm doing this, I'm a gay person, I'm kissing a boy, and wow, like, I thought I was growing, and so we do this, and the night's great, and we keep dancing and keep drinking, having the best time, and then he invites us back to his house. At that point, I am really drunk. Obviously, I'm not going to drive home at that point. And it felt like, why not? I wanted to experience it. So I came down to do this, and I was in that state, so I did it. So I went up to his house, and again, I'm like, I don't know where we're going. We got in the cab, and it was like 20 minutes away, and we go into his room, and I remember like coming in and out of, you know, out of it. And, you gave me some, I think, well, I know what it is now, but at the point I didn't know it was animal stuff. And right, we start having sex, right, for the first time in my life. Um, and, loudness, whatever, it was full on. And then I passed out in his bed. And I woke up the next morning and I'm like, oh my God, who is this? Properly, like trying to refresh my memories. Who is this person? Where am I? How do I get home? And I'm like, he's still asleep. So I grab my things, put my clothes on, and I go to get out of the house. I didn't even really remember how to get in. So I go and I go down the stairs. And as I go down the stairs, you go into like a hallway, and to the right pretty much is where like kitchen dining room table is. And then I guess the left is the door. And I look there and I see like what I'd assume was his parents and his little sister sitting at the breakfast table. And the mum just literally points and goes, "The door's that way, darling." And I left and I was like mortified, thinking, oh my God. But also like, wow, like his family know about this. They're okay with it. Like I'm some guy that stayed over. Like it was all strange to me, right? But I left. And obviously I didn't know where I was going. So I just got in a cab and I was like, "Can you please take me to Arc?" And they're like, "Well, it's closed." I go, "I know, but I don't know where it is, but I know where my car is and it's near them." So I could go back. I drove home. That was my first ever experience with a guy. And at this point, that was a lot for me. So I kind of let that simmer for maybe a month or so. And then I eventually started going out again, going down to Sydney. And I started going once a week and I started meeting people and making friendships. And I was like, wow. And I started feeling luckier within myself, but still living like a double life because I'd be back at home, like I said, going to work, coming home, hiding away. Still had the resistance and the hiding from my family because, I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing at all. But suppose I wanted to know that if I ever decided that this wasn't right, I could go back and just slot into this pretend life again. And then, of course, as time goes on, I of course, start to feel more comfortable in your own skin. So I think, even in those interactions where you see your family, maybe you're wearing different kinds of clothes, they're like getting a bit curious about what's happening. But still, I pushed and pushed away. I started going out more and more and more, like to the point where like it took over my entire life. I was going out, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And at this point, I was working, in a job where like, it's some responsibility, but it was it was one of those spots where if I was to move a step further forward, I could get stuck in this job forever. So eventually I kind of just bit one day and I said, no, I'm done because I felt like, like I said, I was continuing to get bullied in the workplace and I was done. And I had enough money in the bank that like I could support myself for, 6 months or so. And so I quit and I took the next few months off and I really tried to figure out more of who I was. And just really was going out all the time and having the best time of my life, thinking that this was, wow, my eyes are open, my doors are wide open, like the world was my oyster, right? Living, living, living. Eventually the money all runs out and I end up having to go get another job. And at that point, I was still living at home and I'm struggling because I didn't know how to, you know, deal with my family. Like my mom was getting really upset. She was, feeling like there was something really wrong with me and that, I pushed them all away and she would cry to me all the time. And I just kept like, dismissing her at that point. Not, as I look back, I broke my heart because I love my mom so much, but I just couldn't show these things as well. So eventually I got a job and I decided that like maybe I needed to go overseas and go somewhere else where I wasn't known, where I could just like figure it out and then maybe I would be able to come home and talk to my family about these things. As we get closer and closer to the time, I realized that maybe I should tell them before I leave to go overseas so that if they had a problem with it, then they had some time to deal with it. And so I was going away for this point, 3 months over to Canada. I was born in Canada. I wanted to go back and kind of understand about a bit more of my roots and maybe live in it and explore that world as well. And so figure it out. I go there. The night before, we had a big family dinner as like a send off to me. And I go through this, like, I had this whole big spill of what I wanted to say and do and blah, 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 blah. So the night keeps going and going and going and going. And then as everyone starts to leave, as literally people are about to walk out the door, I scream, I literally screamed it out and I just fell on the floor crying, 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 crying. And then I had to deal with the conversations. And, most literally, my sisters and my oldest brother, they kind of already knew. Actually, at that point, to be honest, I didn't add to the story that my sister knew, and she had actually been out to a few parties with me because she knew someone who was gay who then saw me out, and she asked me one day, and initially she wanted to come and be supportive, and so I kind of already had spoken to my sister about it. So that part was it, but no one else in my family knew. So my older brother had assumed, my other brother didn't know, and my mum kind of had started to think about these things because again we were also pushed away and also different to her other sons. So she had these thoughts, and my dad as well. So as we had said it, there was no complete shock to them, even though I thought, wow, like they must be completely shocked. They weren't shocked. And in most of them, they were really supportive of me. Of course, they had their different ways of showing it. My brother, who I thought would have the biggest problem with it, because he was so, masculine, straight, like the kind of person that like listened to death metal and skate park and smoking weed, all that stuff. And like just the stereotypical kind of like, that kind of kid. If he was like, doesn't matter. We still love you. And I remember like that sticking with me forever. Like, wow, like him of all people saying that to me was the most important part of it. And so I go off to leave. And then my dad, the next day my dad pulls me aside and says, look, I just want to give you some advice. And he told me how he had at one point back when he was living in the UK, was living with a gay couple. They were in one of the rooms, like a room share place, and one of the rooms was that. And he saw that there was always an abusive couple and there was always fights, and he sometimes had to break up the fights. And so he kind of said to me, like, I don't want I don't want that for your life. I don't want it to be harder for you. Being gay is going to be harder for you in your life. And so for me, I remember leaving there thinking like, wow, like he supports me, but he doesn't want me to be this way. That was what I heard. But as I, later on understood that, like he was coming from what he saw and understood. He wasn't trying to silence me or dismiss my life choices or my like me being authentically who I am. He was just scared for me because he'd seen only bad representation again, which to be fair enough is the truth. At that point, there was no good representation on TV. There was hardly like it was definitely not legal. It was all legal. All these things were going through their brain. So I understand looking back on it, the story, but at the time, it really affected me thinking that he really didn't want this for me and that, he didn't accept me and understand me. And so I kind of lived with that for a while. But that's how I went. I left, I went overseas, and kind of like my whole internalized world started unraveling mentally, emotionally. And I ended up deciding that I wanted to come back home after 2 months because I'd just done this big thing. I'd met all these great people in my life, all these gay friends. I'd told my family, and then I left. And then I went overseas, and it was difficult. It wasn't fun. I mean, I had some fun times, but it definitely wasn't a good experience. So I decided to come early, and then like ended up moving to Sydney, and it did take a couple of years to really integrate this into my life because I was finally out, but I didn't still understand. Like this was just the beginning of understanding who I was. And as we know throughout our journey, like that first coming out experience to me, to other people, to my family, they're all pivotal. But as we grow older, coming out is a continuous thing. And this is, this was back when I like that was me 21, 22, and 38. So let's just say 16 years difference. And it's gotten a lot better, of course. Totally. And I can see it. And most people don't even care at all. It's just the constant fact that every time I meet someone new, go to a new area, I have to come out again in some sense because especially doing what I do for a living, when people ask me, what do you do? And I say that, I'm a CEO and founder of QueerQuest. I'm a transformation coach for people in the queer community, LGBTQIA+. Automatically, people are going to assume and understand that I am part of that community. I have to come out. And so I have gone to terms where it's like I said, I don't give a crap. I'm really in a place where I completely love and accept myself. I know that there's nothing wrong with me in any of those ways. It took a lot of work though. Because when I came out, like I said, I got caught up. I was so caught up in the party lifestyle. I'd go all the time and eventually moved from alcohol to drugs. And I would literally, go in and out of that. That was my life for many, many years. And a lot of that is still repressing a lot of the trauma that I went through in the years of being bullied and struggling internally. Because once you come out, like life doesn't miraculously change. It does get better for sure. But once you start to feel this sense of like, wow, okay, I don't have to hide anymore. But you still have to deal with some of those things. So it took a long time for me to really process and understand it and go through the healing work and go through the 18 different stages of queer healing. And now this is something that I've created a like a free ebook about. It's called, The Queer Journey to Healing. And I have a free ebook. I'm going to link it below if someone wants to check it out. But you get to look at all 18 stages that a queer person goes through from before coming out until really full acceptance, where you find inner peace around that whole area of it as well. So you want to understand it, you can check it out, and then you can find out what stage that you're on, and then you can let me know, because I really want to hear about what stage you think that you're at on your queer healing journey as well. All right. I've shared my own coming out story. So if you want to share something with me about your own, you know where you can find me across all social media platforms under Cristiano Green, Queer Transformation Coach, search QueerQuest, and you'll find me as well. I'm going to link some stuff below for you to look at as well. But I'll also be back next week with another episode of the QueerQuest podcast. But until then, always remember that you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.